Hey, my name's James Nicholson and welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, I want to talk about the Renters' Rights Bill. It's starting to move forward a little bit more now. It's being talked about more in Parliament and it's something that Labour are adamant they want to get through as quickly as possible. Now, there's a few things here. They've said other things that they want to get done. For example, building lots of houses. That's on them though. They actually have to get organised and do some work. This is easier for them to implement because they can dictate the law, get it pushed through, and then it's landlords that ultimately have the problems and have to deal with the stuff and get that sorted. So it's more likely, in my opinion, that this does become law because I don't think that it impacts the government particularly, and it will look really good for them as one of the things that they promised in their manifesto. So let's have a look at what the Renters' Rights Bill is. It was called the Renters' Reform Bill. It's changed. It was the Renters' Reform Bill under the Conservatives. It's changed to the Renters' Rights Bill now under Labour. So let's have a look at that and what impact that has on landlords and people that live in properties as well. Before we do though, make sure you subscribe to the channel over there and hit the bell notification if you haven't done. And let's get some more content views on this channel, on this video in particular, by smashing like, tickling like, doing something to that like button. That really helps with the YouTube algorithm and helps grow the channel. So thanks to everyone that does that. So, the Renters' Rights Bill, it's been floating around in some form or another with both the Conservatives and now Labour, and is worrying a lot of landlords. Shelter, the housing charity, they've had some impact with the government on pushing this forward because obviously we want to make sure people have better quality housing. I don't disagree with that. But there are some things in here that are making a lot of landlords second guess whether they should stay in the market. And there are things that we've had that we've talked about on the channel, and this is probably the number one reason that landlords are looking to quit. More than half of them that have been surveyed are looking to quit the market because of this bill. So let's have a look at what it includes and how that impacts everybody. So the first thing is something called, and I might pronounce this, someone said I do pronounce this name wrong, so I do apologise ahead of time. Is AWAB's law. So this unfortunately was a young boy that got ill and unfortunately died because of black mould in a property. It was a council property, not a private landlord, but still it shouldn't have happened. It's really unfortunate and really not acceptable that it happened. And so I agree with this, that we want to make it so anyone that has dangerous mould in a property, it does need to get dealt with very, very quickly. And so this is going to be part of the Renters' Rights Bill, that any black mould, a landlord is expected to get that dealt with pretty much immediately. So that's important and I can't argue with that one. Next is no bidding wars. So what we're talking about here, this doesn't happen where I'm from, but I think it does in London. And so in London and other places, I'm sure, you can get a property for rent and loads of people can look at it all at once. The rent might be 1,200 quid and then people can bid more if they want. There can be bidding wars pushing that rent up significantly. Now the price that you advertise is what you're going to have to rent at. Now, I've talked about this before. Some landlords are saying, well, we'll just put the higher asking price up initially, and that's fine. You can do that, but you've got to make sure you get the inquiries as well. So you've got to have a rent at a level that is acceptable, that people will make an inquiry, but you can't have bidding wars now. I've never come across that, but I do know that it does happen. Now, the tenants will be able to challenge rent increases. So if you increase your rent, at the moment, you can put your rent up. There isn't any real laws on this. You can put it up however much you want. And I have heard of landlords, especially when the interest rates started going up, that did 20% increases or higher. I'm sure some of you have heard of these. I'm sure, comment below, let me know. Do you know friends, family, or have you had a huge rental increase? I'd like to know that. And now you'll be able to challenge those. And so if it's unfair, especially if it's not close to inflation or there's no real reason for it, then you won't be able to put the rent up. Now, what that means for landlords is that it is important to put your rent up annually, maybe in line with inflation, because otherwise you could get left behind. What I mean by that is if you just feel you're being nice to the tenant and you don't put the rent up for 10 years, you're not going to be able to suddenly increase it unless that tenant moves out and then you remarket the property. So tenants will be able to challenge rent increases. I think that's fair. And yeah, that's something that's going to be included in that. What else have we got? Pets. This is one thing that some landlords are worried about. So you won't be able to reasonably refuse pets. If a tenant has a pet, you will need to consider it. You don't have to accept them, but you have to reasonably consider it. Also, that tenant, though, which is good for the landlords, you can ask that they have insurance to protect your property. Not insurance for the pet, as in its health. I mean insurance as in it doesn't damage the property. Household, like the internal insurance. You can suggest or ensure that they have that if they have a pet. That's important. Next is decent home standards. So this is unclear, and this will become clear as this bill goes through. But they'll be talking about decent home standards. And what I mean by that is that you can't have a property with windows that leak or leaky boilers and stuff like that, and mold and undecorated. It needs to be to a certain standard. Now, that's questionable. What is the standard? And they will lay that out. And so there will be cases that obviously will go to court ultimately where the landlord hasn't given a high quality property. Now, I'm a landlord, I've got a portfolio, I'm happy with that. I'll tell you why, because most of my properties I buy dilapidated, they need a full refurbishment, we do everything, we like replaster it, new carpets, kitchens, bathrooms, everything's brand new when my tenants are in, and that's an advantage because I do that. Every other landlord's going to have to do it as well, and so that's good for me, and that might get a few landlords out the market. Good. Makes it better for the landlords that do it properly. Now, if you don't follow the decent home standards, which will be published, and you are a repeat offender, you can get fined £7,000. That's not great. So that's another thing here. What else is there going to be? There is going to be a landlord database that will be shared between councils and all sorts of people, where you'll be able to check, is the landlord a rogue? Do they take you to court? Have they had like the decent home standards enforced against them before? I don't have a problem with that. I do think though that it would be fair if you could get a tenants database. So when you're doing your references on a tenant, you could see, have they ever been in arrears with rent? And if they have, is that multiple times? Or was it just a one-off because they lost their job? Like if it goes one way, I think it should go the other, right? I think that's important as well. Next is you won't be allowed to say anyone with benefits can't stay there. So you've got to consider benefits tenants. I've got benefits tenants. I don't have a problem, but some people really don't like it. And that's one reason some landlords don't want to stay in the market. So that's another consideration there. Next is periodic tenancies. Now, this one does worry some people. So what does this mean? So when someone gets a tenancy, normally it's 6 months or 12 months. That's what mine are, at least. 6 months or 12 months, and then they renew, right? So the agent does it every year or every 6 months, normally every year in my scenario. What they're saying now is that the tenant will get a tenancy and it will just be rolling forever, right? So once they've got to 2 months, they can give you notice, and they can give you a month's notice or 2 months notice, at any point, and it goes on forever. Now, why some people are worried about this, and this will happen, but I think it will be quite rare, is that you'll get a tenant that takes the property, right? They take the property, and on day one, they give you 2 months notice, meaning they can have it as like a cheap Airbnb. If they want a short-term property, they can have it for 2 months. And then you've had all the costs of marketing, the estate agent, you'd lose money. If that happened too many times, it will be an absolute nightmare for you. So that said, that is something that is going to happen. Rolling tenancies, where you just give 2 months notice, that worries a lot of people. And the last two, children as well. You have to consider people with children. I don't have a problem with that. I think having families there keeps them there longer. But the last one that worries most people is the abolishing Section 21. Section 21 is called a no-fault eviction. It means for any reason you can give notice to your tenant and get your property back. Now, a lot of people use those if the tenant's got rent arrears or some sort of problem, but some people use them in an unfair way. They take the property back, they remarket it at a massive increase in rent because rents have been going up, and that's not really fair. So the shelter and all the homeless charities are saying these Section 21s must go. Landlords like Section 21s because it gives them the security if they need their property back. You see, if a tenant doesn't pay rent, it can take a year to take them to court. And if they don't pay the rent for the year, you still got to pay the mortgage, and you might end up getting your house or flat repossessed because they haven't paid the rent and paid thousands in court fees. And so I think that if this does happen, what Labour are saying is that you will be able to get people out quicker. They haven't said how, but I think they'll abolish Section 21. This is what I think. They'll abolish Section 21, but they'll replace it with something similar. So I do think landlords will have a faster way to get their property back if they need. Labour's also said they're going to get the courts faster, more staff, more judges, more clerks, and all of this stuff. So that's something to look at. But Section 21 is the number one reason why a lot of landlords are leaving. Now, tenants that watch this might say, great, get rid of the landlords. You don't really want that, and here's why. Because there's a severe lack of rental properties at the moment. The government has already discovered this week they're not going to build 1.5 million houses in 5 years as they promised. So the less rental stock, the higher the rents are going to be. That's not great. And that is going to mean that you'll find it harder to get a property. In fact, already there's people commenting on my videos that say they're agents, that they get 100 inquiries for one flat. Now, if you get rid of more landlords, that might go up to 150 inquiries per flat or 200 inquiries per flat, which has happened in Scotland and Ireland. And that isn't what we want. We want a fair system. A lot of this stuff as a landlord, I agree with. I think it's great. But I do think if the tenant is in arrears, there must be a way to get that property back quicker. Let me know your thoughts on this renters' rights bill in the comments below. Do smash like, do subscribe, check out all the other content on my channel, including this video right here.